get you all together at the start of the unit. This is the assessment instrument. What are we expecting from students? And might even have some sample student responses to show you at a high level, low level, medium level. So you know before you even start teaching, before you do anything at all, everyone in the room agrees that these are the qualities that you're looking for. And then when you do that, you're back with mapping and you can provide really comprehensive teaching and learning experiences that you know other teachers are doing or colleagues that might be doing it a slightly different way, and that's okay too. You bring your personality into the classroom with you. So, reliability is achieved by a common approach to marking, they're the ISMGs, and a consistent and shared understanding of the evidence required. So what does effective mean? What does discerning mean? Those are the things that we wrestle with sometimes. But when you have those conversations, it starts to come together. What about threats to reliability? What would they be? In terms of your marking, what do you think would be a threat? Something that would affect your reliability. Yep.
A lack of understanding of the cognitive burden bias and things.
Yep. If you don't understand what analyse means, if you think analyse actually means explain, you've got major issues. If you think that, in fact, you're going to probably be, I'm going to get this right, if you're marking students on their ability to explain, and they should be analysed, you're probably going to be marking higher than you should, because explain is a lower level of cognitive word. So yes. What other threats?
Whether you like or you don't like the student.
Yes.
And whether you think that they're better than that and they didn't do any work and you want to punish them, or you think that they should have got more and you want to reward what they're capable of, and you know that their parent just died and they're having a crappy month.
And Johnny tried so hard. Do we reward effort? We don't. You match to the evidence of the student work. Seems a bit mean sometimes, but we're talking about the entire state, 20,000 students in a year. You have to have equity, absolutely critical. So yes, absolutely that's a threat to reliability. I always said in a school, I don't want to know the student's name. In fact, I try not to look at the student name. I wanted student numbers like you guys have here, so that couldn't even come into the equation. But there were some students writing voice that was so strong, even though I would look at their name, I knew it was them. Just simply because of the way they were communicating, their language choices and things. Not many, but there was one or two that I thought, I know who this is. I haven't even looked at the name. Any other threats? Fatigue? Yep.
Also how well you actually understand the content of the novel or the film, the text that you're looking at.
That raises a really interesting question in the confirmation space. Not every confirmer is going to know every prescribed text, and nor should they have to. So think about that one.
Yeah, the teacher's biased on the content, so what they believe.
Lovely. Why is that such an issue? It's happened to me actually.
For example, if I were reading a really well written essay that said climate change was not a concern, it would be really hard for me to see that in the same light as reading one that said it was. So you have to break your bias there. If that's what the assessment's asking.
But you're demonstrating a high level of self-awareness that not all teachers can. And I once was marked down because I had a different opinion to the marker. And I really went hard on that.
That happens all the time.
No, it doesn't. Yes, so that's really important. The content. Maybe you think that Beck is actually about this, or the student's thesis doesn't align with yours. That's not the point. You're marking against the objectives. Yes.
Prioritising different aspects of what you're marking, like say someone really finicky with the punctuation when they're not looking at the big picture, so they might be marking down because of just how it's written.
And you know what? I've had a lot of strong conversations with people about that. Like, I am a grammar Nazi. I love grammar, I love spelling, I love punctuation, even though I've made some typos on Blackboard, which half kills me, but it's because of other stuff in my life at the moment. But you can actually still mark accurately those things, but still tease out the knowledge. So you might have a student who's written so badly, but there are some gems of ideas in there. You've got to be able to find them, and some people can't, which is why these communities of practice are so important.
I'm not sure if this would be reliability, but if you fell into the trap of comparing different students to each other rather than the standards.
That is a threat to reliability, and it's a big one. In fact, a very, very efficient, expert, quality teacher went and did one of the external trials in English, and she was telling me about the experience, and she said, I was marking perfectly. There was no error until this one night. And they called her up and they said, oh look, there's some discrepancy here. And she said she was thinking about it, and what she'd started doing was, she'd started comparing that sample to the one before it that she'd given A2, and was thinking, this isn't as good as that one, so it's got to be a B, instead of going to the standards. And then as soon as she switched back and went to the standards, the problem went away. Did you want to say something, Roger?
No.
Yeah.
I've experienced that teaching at tertiary level where there's no ISNG, where the only thing you've got is students' work. So I've probably got into some bad habits doing that way. It's something that I'll have to be particularly cautious about when I'm grading something. I'm going to mix this, not between each other in the group.
I mean, people say to me, because I've got children who are 20, 23 and 32, and they say to me, which system would you prefer your own children to go through? The other one on this one, I'd say this one. I wish my children had gone through this one, because this is accountable and it's transparent, more so than any other system that we've had. It's scary from a teacher point of view, but I think as we move through the process, we will be all over it. Like the skill levels rising, we're all working together like never before. Like there's a real sense of support out there between schools. Okay, so we did talk about these last week, but let's just recap them quickly. That's our criterion and knowledge application. So that's what students know and understand about the text. Analysis in this case, so which assessment instrument does it have to be, or most likely be, or it will be? Yes, so the IA1, the external assessment is assessing this, but it won't look like this, because it has a different format. So it's the IA1. We talked about the grouping of objectives. That's the STEM, the student work has the following characteristics. Note that we are not saying the student. All the focus is always on the response, not the person. So we can remove that personal message. It's about the work, it's not about the student. Performance descriptor. In English, this is the descriptor and the characteristic. So if I say characteristic, you know I mean descriptor and vice versa, and it means the whole thing. That's not the case in other subject areas. In other subject areas, they have one descriptor, but there are different characteristics within that. We're lucky in a sense that that's not the case with us. Qualifier, how well? Cognitive verb, talked about the importance of those things, and the mark range. So that's our ISMG. Now, we talked about this again last week, but I will talk about it often. It's best fit approach. What does best fit mean? Well, it means where most of the evidence sits, because it fits the best. We match the evidence. This is the actual process. The first thing you do when you get a bit of student work is you read it and you match the evidence of the student work to the typical characteristics described in the performance level descriptors. So to do that, obviously you need to know your qualifiers. So what does discerning mean? We know it's our top level. What does discerning mean? And where do we find that information? Glossary. Does someone want to read it out? Do you want to read it out for us? What's your name?
I'm Kat.
Kat.
Yeah. Discerning. So many words.
Okay. Can you sing the definition?
Yeah, please. I can't. Okay. Discriminating, showing intellectual choices selected for value or relevance.
Does it say perfect?
No.
Does it say flawless?
No.
No.
Does it say tertiary level?
No.
Negative.
Does it say extraordinarily amazing and never to be beaten?
No.
No. There's a reason I say that. Alright, so we need to know our qualifiers. And then, Kate, can you read out effective for us too, please? We might as well do this now because we need to know because we're going to be marking student work. So let's do it.
Can. Successful in producing the intended, desired, or expected
So-
result.
Just pause there for a moment, just think about that. Can you actually read it again for us, please?
Successful in
Successful.
producing the intended, desired, or expected result.
Can you see the difference between discerning and effective? So in discerning we had things like subtle, thoughtful choice, astute. Effective we had successful in terms of meeting the desired result. Okay, what is adequate, please?
It is satisfactory or acceptable in quality or quantity equal to the requirement or occasion.
So satisfactory. Okay, so can you see the difference between effective and adequate and discerning? So we had astute, discerning, we had successful, effective, and we had satisfactory
Or acceptable.
or acceptable. There you go. So think about those words when you're looking at student work. Then what you do is you decide on the performance level and mark because you've ticked. You've said, okay, there's one discerning, there's one effective, and there's one adequate. That's your first step. You put your ticks down. Then you say, oh, I've got to work out what the performance level is now. That's where you apply the rules of the marking guide that I'm going to share with you again. And then, after you've done that, you do the mark range. You determine the mark. Now, I did say this the other week, but I just want to reiterate it because I know I'm giving you a lot of new content, and that's when repetition is really valuable. Each tick is a best fit judgment that helps you make the final judgment. And what I mean by that is, and I talk about this all the time with people, is that when you're marking a piece of student work, you might see discerning, 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 effective, adequate. Discerning, 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 effective, adequate. Discerning, 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 effective, adequate. What's the best bit going to be? Discerning. That, it might not be that clear though. You might have effective, 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 discerning, discerning, discerning.
So wouldn't it meet in the middle?
Well, you have to make a decision.
Right. Depending on the
You
work,
have to
obviously.
tick. You
Yeah.
have to say is it effective
Yeah.
or is it discerning? And that's where that best fit judgment comes in.
Yeah.
Really, you have to go back to it and say, well, is it more discerning? Or is it more effective?
I just feel like if it's best fit though, how are you supposed to like get the same mark as someone else who marks it if it's based on your own judgment? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, but that's because you know what the qualifiers mean. And it's quite interesting. At work, a colleague marked a student script, and it was a short story, which is the hardest to get consistency on. And I marked it based on exactly the same number. We were out by one in one criteria, and that happened multiple times because we had shared understanding of what those qualifiers meant. If that doesn't happen, it just means someone's perception of discerning or effective or adequate is different to someone else's. But really, the ideal is to have all teachers in the state sharing the same understanding.
Yeah.
What effective. There will always be a little bit of give. Like there'll always be a little bit of, tolerance level.
Yeah. I mean, there's always like you can always print off the cognitive verbs like piece of paper and like look over to it just to make sure that you're actually thinking that's the same thing that's
That's
written.
also
Yeah.
asked before. If you're marking a bunch of year 11's work, would you have the ISMG taped to the wall in front of you so you can look at it with cognitive verbs? So it's all there, so you're not relying on memory, it's clear, it's concise, it's specific.
I I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
I need stuff highly visible for me to get it right.
Yeah.
And you'll all find your own way of working. I reckon 10 years from now you probably won't need to do that.
Do you kind of get, is it like riding a bike, like you get used to it and you kind of just like go like bam, 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 cool, next? Like can you, or do you have, does it take a while?
It takes a
still?
little while.
Ah.
New teachers will take a lot longer to mark than experienced teachers.
Yeah.
But you have to remember too that confirmers are limited to the amount of time they have. They're reviewing and not remarking as well. So it's not, whoa, did the school get this descriptor right or wrong?
So say for the first assessment, IA1.
Yep.
I think you have this actually on all of them, but for this one, you've got your successful application, organisation development, textual features. They're all ISFGs, right? So the one piece of work you would be marking 3 different pieces.
Right.
Is that how it works?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, we have 11 objectives and they're split into 3 criterion. If I go back to this, these 3 objectives belong to that criteria of knowledge application. When I say knowledge application to you by the end of this unit, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You'll know that that's knowledge of the text. And these are the hardcore ones. Like, this is where students really shine or not.
But not every assessment is all the criteria though, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It is every assessment?
11
Oh.
objectives are assessed in every assessment instrument. So this is one criterion.
Oh,
But we have a totally different way of
Yeah.
working.
right, okay.
So, and that's unusual, but it's the way we work. We
Yeah.
cannot not assess spelling and punctuation.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
cannot not assess knowledge of genre.
yeah.
We cannot not assess language choices or vocabulary. You know, like we're kind of bound by that.
Yeah.
And then you've got another 2 criteria. You've got organisation and development. That's put over here. And you've got, I think, 6 subjectives grouped into there, something like that. And then you've got textual features, which is our spelling, punctuation, and spoken mode, like gestures, spatial expression, and so on. So for each assessment, you're marking 3 separate pieces of criterion. So they're out of 25 in English. Each assessment, 25. 3 times for the internal assessment, IA1, IA2, IA3.
Sorry, one question about that.
Yes.
I might be jumping ahead, I'm not sure. I felt like I had it, but now I just muddle myself up a little bit. Each of them are weighted differently as well, though. Correctly? So then, how does that work?
Good question. Can I come back to that?
Yeah.
Because although, do you want me to answer that now? Like, are you all ready to hear that now?
Can we repeat
I don't
the
know.
question, please?
Okay, alright, if you open your syllabus then, let's just give this a strong visual impression in your minds. If you open your syllabus to the IA1 specification, I think it's page 32 or something. I got it right. Page 32. You've got the first ISMG for knowledge application, but if you have a look at page 31, you've got a table, a box, and you've got the 3 criterion there. And you can see that knowledge application has 9 marks. You can see that organisation development has 8 marks, and textual features has 8 marks.
Yeah, because then on the marks part, it only goes up to 8 on 2 of them.
Correct. But keep those numbers in mind or write them down somewhere, because when you go over to the IA2, drum roll, page 36, what do you notice about the marks?
Textual features is the highest one.
The textual features criterion is the highest one. So why might that be?
Persuasive speech, the mode is actually going to carry the weight of the communication. The verbal and non-verbal body language cues are going to be as more important than structure in sort of connecting with the audience and making the message meaningful and fulfilling the obligations of the genre.
Beautifully explained. It's making sure we're giving credit to students for that really hard part of the task. We are valuing that textual feature of the spoken mode. Yeah.
Also, it's like multimodal or has multimodal elements which fits within textual features.
Yes, it does, absolutely. And actually, to make that point really clear, I want you to turn to page 5 or 6 of the syllabus, because it's really important you know that this is here. We have talked about it, but this is where you need to keep going back to stuff all the time. Oh, got the pages right again. Have a look at objective 11, it's on page 6. Go and look at objective 11. Because you can see, we just looked at the textual features for the persuasive speech, and we saw that it assesses objectives 9, 10 and 11. Can you see that? Well, to know what 9, 10 and 11 is, you go to those objectives at the front of the syllabus and you can see 11, use mode appropriate features to achieve particular purposes, and then they're listed there. So you can see written, spoken, signed, non-verbal, complementary features. And they are only examples. Whenever you see in one of our syllabuses E.G, it's not a definitive list, they're just examples. So they're not compulsory, it's just to remind you of what some of those things are. Yep.
So can I clarify? That means that the I's and G's for each assessment piece are already weighted when you don't have to then go apply the weighting, correct?
Correct. It's all done for you.
Brilliant, that makes sense.
It does. And it's all about reliability across the state. Teacher in Cairns, teacher in Mackay, teacher in Longreach, teacher at Churchie, teacher at Grammar, teacher wherever, you're bound by this document. So we're going to get greater consistency and equity across the state. So they were really good questions.
I feel like I get tripped up because in our TA1 in drama,
Yeah.
it's completely
I
different.
know, it's so good.
And so like that's why I asked before, oh, do you assess all of the criteria? Because in drama they choose. They're like, oh, objectives 5 and 6 aren't, you know, and you're like, why? What? Stop.
And it's
Let's just all do it the one way, please.
But it's because we can't, because
Oh.
each subject has its own purpose and
Yeah.
function. So we're trying to capture that. It would be nice if everything was the same, but if everything was the same, we wouldn't need different subjects.
Yeah.
They all have nuances to them that need to be recognised and rewarded
Yeah.
for particular reasons. And like I said before, we cannot not mark spelling and punctuation in a written piece.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We can't not mark genre. It's the nature of our subject. And for us in for an essay, other subjects mark that too, but it's not to the same, often not to the same extent that we do. Right. So, if we are going to be applying the best fit principle, is this still filming, by the way? It stopped filming the other day, which was really annoying. Okay, this is an easy one. What do you remember? What is the mark?
9,
Yes, it is. Why is it 9?
because you have all 3 criterion in the discerning box highlighted, which means
Can
that
you-
there's no bleed over to effective, which means they get the maximum possible, which is 9.
Why can't they get an 8?
Because that is not how the marking is structured and set up in Queensland.
They can't get an 8. So, I was having a conversation with someone about this today. Let's say that in your head, 3/4 of the student sample is discerning, but there's a quarter effective, 3/4 discerning, a quarter effective, 3/4 discerning, a quarter effective. What are we going to do? We know the student maybe shouldn't necessarily be getting the 9. Don't worry, it won't happen. The idea is that if you know that mark is worth 8, then it could be that actually one tick should be down here. It's just you working out which one it is. Sometimes if people are having problems with the marking guide, if they've decided on a mark and they don't think it's the right mark, then you go back to where you placed your ticks, because the mark falls out of where you place your ticks. Which is why the very first thing you do is you match to a qualifier. Is it discerning? Is it effective? Is it adequate? And the mark falls out of that. Okay, what about this one? Shh. 8. Did someone describe why it's an 8?
Because there's one in the 6 and 7 box.
But it's still best fit, so it still has to be.
Yeah.
A really good way of getting your head around the marking guide, I think, fairly quickly, is to say where is most of the evidence. And what I do when I use ISMGs, I just tick, just here, highlight wherever you want. So once you've done the matching, you say, okay, where is the most evidence? Okay, I can see that there's 2 here and there's 1 somewhere else. So it has to be in that performance level. I actually physically tick, because you might not have 2 that's so blindingly obvious like that. You might have 1 tick there, 1 tick there, 1 tick there.
Yeah, what if there's 2 ticks in the second box and, oh, because there's only 3, okay. So if there are 2 ticks in the second box and 1 in the top box, it'd be a 7, right?
Correct.
Okay.
What would you do if it was 1 each? Like if you had 1 saying 1 effective and 1 adequate?
So that could happen. And again, it comes back to my little ticking tip. And maybe the arts people will probably kind of get this, is if you've got a tick here, and a tick here, it really means you've got 2 ticks here, doesn't it? Because if a student is demonstrating this, then they're also demonstrating this. So you can say 2 ticks there, and then whatever it is down below. So you know that the mark has to be in here. Now, because there's a mark further down, it's got to be the lower number in that range, so it's a 6. So just experiment with different ways of doing it. You come back to that best fit, and as you practice it, it'll become more obvious to you. So I'll just repeat that. If there's evidence above, then it's been met here. So you can say, okay, there are 2 ticks here, and that will help guide you, and then your mark falls out of that. Yep.
So you don't mean, like, say you've got 2 in your discerning box, but then one's like down at like adequate or superficial. Does that mean it stays in the discerning, but it's a lesser discerning number?
Yes.
Or so it'd be an 8, even though one of the is like superficial or adequate, it's really bad, but it's okay.
And the reason is it's an analytical process. We're not averaging out.
Okay.
We're actually saying that we're still saying there's more of this than anything else. So we're rewarding that, because if a student is demonstrating something, you can't take it away from them.
Okay.
It's kind of an interesting idea, but it will eventually become normal. It will become normal.
And is that sort of developed from the feedback practices?
Sorry.
Is that developed in response to sort of all the theory of feedback and positive reinforcement and things like that as much as anything else?
Yeah, there are rules they are rules designed to recognise the evidence in student responses and to not take away it's not a deficit-based approach. But I would argue that we wouldn't see that very often.
So what
Because our objectives are so closely connected and interrelated, you're probably not going to see it all that often, so it's probably not even something to really worry about.
basically what you're saying is at the moment you all have 100% for this,
Yeah.
and I'm going to look at it and take marks off for what's not there, rather than saying you've got nothing and I'm going to put marks in for what I observe there.
I'm a little bit uncomfortable
Yeah.
with agreeing with that. I would always say, I know what you're saying, but our mantra is you match the evidence to the qualifiers. It's not really that you start with anything, but I guess implicitly, I don't know, it's really hard if you want to commit either way, but the most important thing is that you're matching to these qualifiers all the time. So everyone has a chance to get discerning. Everyone has an opportunity to get that particular mark because we created valid assessment. Remember validity and accessibility? We designed our assessment so that the top students can get the top marks, that the middle level students can get their marks, that every student can demonstrate what they know and what they can do because we've written an awesome task and it does all those things, which takes a little bit of time as well. So here are 2 more examples. Easy. Easy. See, you've got it already. Okay. And I knew one of you would ask me that. I thought I popped it in there. All right. And we talked about that. Okay. So this is, yes, go. Yep.
I was just going to say, my issue is not so much that. It's not that it's an issue, it's a confusion almost.
Yeah.
Cause that's awesome. But my confusion is like, how am I supposed to know what a discerning piece looks like?
Yeah.
If it's, you know, like, cause Lauren was just talking about how discerning for her would be like a tertiary level, you know, but what if
That's a
it's
problem,
like,
right?
yeah, so like what if, how are you supposed to know?
The glossary, it's still up to the interpretation of how you interpret the glossary definition of what
Yeah.
this means.
Yeah, and that's what we wrestle with in our awesome subject area, but I'm going to help you out there and just answer this question.
The other question I was about, like the qualifiers, is we were talking about accessibility and students being able to understand. It should be that every student is able to understand what's required of them. What if you have ELD students in your classroom that actually have no idea what that word means?
And I guess to some extent you have done everything you can to use neutral language, appropriate language that's age specific and age appropriate. Sometimes students need extra support from us, and that happens outside the task. From an endorsement perspective, QCAA says you need to meet these things. This is your checklist. Tick them all off before you send us anything. Check it first and then get someone to check it and give you feedback. Don't even give it to us until you've gone through this process. 2, satisfy that criteria. But we all know there are students who are going to need a conversation about what that task actually means. Lots of conversations. In fact, in one school I worked at, I spent more time unpacking the task, which made me really, really angry because the task was 17 pages long and multi-layered and really confusing and really complicated. So I spend more time unpacking the task than I did teaching the text, and it still makes me angry to this day.
Yeah.
Seriously, I was standing there in the classroom so many times just wanting to go,
What year level was this? That
12.
they had a 17-page assessment.
That's why I like the new system.
Yeah.
We had some heads of department around the state who would do nothing but canon. Others would do nothing but popular culture. Where's your balance? Where's your range and breadth and balance of texts? That's why I like the new system, amongst many other reasons. So I get fired up about some things, just like you do.
Love a bit of fire.
Yeah.
One of the articles we had to read for 122 talked about that too. Task sheet should be no longer than 2 pages.
Lean and mean. You know what we find? We find that the longer the task is, the more contradictions there are, which cause problems with accessibility. The more issues there are with the construct, because teachers are trying to put too much in. Lean and mean. White space. Say only what you have to, and then move on to something else.
One more like controversial topic question. The whole system is trying to create equity across the nation, right? Do we fear that we're, not that this really fits, but making the rich richer and poor poorer? Because how are we giving a leg up to people in lower socioeconomic areas that have less access to the resources that, say, a Brisbane inner city private school has? If we're judging everybody on the same, when we know that one student here and one student here might come from completely different cultural contexts.
The cartoon that pops into my head when you say that, and you might have all seen it, is that diagram, the drawing, black and white drawing of a fish, an elephant, and there's something else standing at the tree, and the assessment is to climb the tree or something. That's what pops into my head when you say that. And I think that's the reality of life and humanity, and we do our best to take that into account. I'm not saying our education system is perfect, and I suppose I'm answering philosophically. I think Queensland is an extraordinary educational system because what we've done is we have put so much flexibility in the system without sacrificing reliability, validity. That is really hard to do because there's always this tension between equity and recognising diversity. Because equity is all about opportunity. Individuality is about recognising that we all demonstrate what we know and can do in slightly different ways. There's always tension, there's always a rub. But I think Queensland is one of the states that tries legitimately and genuinely really hard to provide options for students to cater for that. And I'd also say that our syllabuses, one of my favourite sayings is, there is flexibility within the prescription of the syllabus. and I have seen the same syllabus used in so many different ways, vastly different, and yet they're all valid. All valid. You're just relying on your school and your head of department teachers to know your students best and to develop an assessment instrument that works to their strengths. And that's not cheating. That is actually being smart about students. Yeah. So this is the task that you looked at last week towards the end of the tutorial. Because you were asking me, well, I don't really know what discerning is because for me it's tertiary level. I get that. Well, on the QCAA portal, there are some student sample responses that show you what high level is, and that's what we looked at last week. Remember this? So this is telling you that this is what discerning looks like. Discerning organisation, sequencing of subject matter, including discerning use of cohesive devices, so it's nice and fluent, to emphasise ideas and connect parts of a text is indicated here. Have a read of it. Do you agree? I'll give you a second of quiet. What more could we ask?
That seems tertiary level. in
It
my
does,
opinion.
isn't it? But a lot of students can write like that.
Yeah. They're using some pretty smart words in there.
And this is organisation and sequencing of subject matter. So it's subject matter is really the texts and their thesis and cohesive devices. I was actually really thinking about the cohesive devices there, the use of commas and thereby and full stops and, you know, comma here rendering them submissive to all facets of pedagogy. I have to admit that some of us have, like adults, have worked this as well, so we can't say it's an authentic student response.
Also, it's not actually a student response.
It started as a student response.
And then it wasn't discerning enough. So
No, it was.
But even so, it's not a perfect response.
It's not a perfect
There are some
response.
unclear pronouns and some typos and a few other bits and pieces.
Yeah, if you read the
a
whole
few
piece,
paragraphs that could be clearer, they're a little bit vague.
yeah. But what was the word we used? Subtle, astute. Astute. That's we can say it's astute. What about this one? Discerning analysis of perspectives and representations of concepts, identities, times, and places in texts. So discerning analysis of a perspective in the texts. And read. Texts, plural, both are there.
I've forgotten what the start of it was about by the time I got to the
Lost
end.
in the middle.
So this leads to this. Here we've got some more notes on the side. The response has a clear thesis statement. What is the thesis? What is the thesis? What's the thesis?
Wouldn't a thesis statement be first sentence? Like, isn't that supposed to pretty much say this is what this is going to be about?
In fact, I used to tell my students never to put their thesis in the first statement of their essay, which write on there around the bend. See, fixated on some things. I'd say you give me a fluff line first. That was my own creation. I'd say, what's a fluff line, miss?
Yeah.
And then I started talking about it to my colleagues and they all started using it. Fluff line. It's just to ease the reader into what's coming, so it might be just the idea. Like to me that's a little bit of a fluff line. That is not the thesis. It can't be the thesis because it's not even referencing both texts and the thesis has to reference both texts. Because if you read the assessment instrument, always read the assessment instrument first, because that's how you know what students are being required to do. I probably should have given you more time to read this. I gave it to you last week. Go back and have a read of the task and what students are required to do,